Well, a certain movie definitely made some of these picks a lot easier this year. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainly Movies. Today I'm going to be talking about my picks and predictions for this year's Oscars. There are 53 films nominated across 23 categories, and just like the last few years, I had the opportunity to see every nominee. I do my Oscar predictions a little differently than most people, so I want to explain what I'm going to do here. Basically, for each category, I'm going to give you two picks. The first is my personal pick. It's the choice that I think was the best or most deserving, and would be my vote if I actually had a vote. The second pick that I'm going to give you is the choice that I think will actually win. This will take into account not only the quality of the film, but also other contributing factors like the demographic makeup of the voting body, current events, and other award season wins. So basically, this is a should win, will win scenario. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content, like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. Remember, these are just my predictions, so be sure to post your own personal predictions for the 2024 Oscars in the comments below. I've already reviewed many of these movies on this channel, so if you want to check those reviews out for some more in-depth thoughts on each of them, I'll put links in the description below, and also link some of them up in the cards as we go along. I've also done a daily 23 video short series ranking the films of each of the 23 Oscar categories, so I'll post the link to that playlist as well. Alright, let's get into the predictions. We'll go in the order that the categories were presented in last year, and I'll put chapter shortcuts in the description to make it a bit easier to navigate. Animated feature film. The nominees are The Boy and the Heron, Elemental, Nimona, Robot Dreams, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. We've got a surprisingly diverse set of nominees in this category this year. We've got some anime, a Pixar film, a superhero movie, and then two smaller studio releases. With how different each of these films are from one another, it makes it a bit tough to compare them. Just like last year, I think I liked the Pixar nominee a little more than most people, and I've gotta say I was really pleasantly surprised by Nimona, but I've gotta give my personal pick to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. It's the only sequel in the nominees this year, but it's just such an impressive work all around. The fantastic animation, the ambitious expansion on the already huge multiverse story. As far as the actual winner goes, I think there's an outside chance that The Boy and the Heron might swoop in, but I'm predicting that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is gonna win, just like its predecessor did. Actor in a supporting role. The nominees are Sterling K. Brown in American Fiction, Robert De Niro in Killers of the Flower Moon, Robert Downey Jr. in Oppenheimer, Ryan Gosling in Barbie, and Mark Ruffalo in Poor Things. As usual, I tend to struggle a bit with judging the acting categories in general, but especially the supporting categories. Last year, I felt surprisingly strongly about my pick for this category, and not so much with supporting actress. Well, that's been flipped around this year. With the exception of me disliking Mark Ruffalo's performance, which is a feat because I usually find him very likable, I didn't feel super strongly about any of the nominees. While I did enjoy Ryan Gosling's performance as Ken, which was easily the most expansive of the supporting actor roles this year, I think I've gotta give my personal pick to Robert Downey Jr. These two are very close for me, but Downey Jr. served as a powerful driving force in his strong dramatic turn as Louis Strauss. And I think we're going to be hearing that Oppenheimer music a lot on Sunday, starting with this category, because I think Robert Downey Jr. is going to actually win. Actress in a supporting role. The nominees are Emily Blunt in Oppenheimer, Danielle Brooks in The Color Purple, America Ferrera in Barbie, Jodie Foster in Nyad, and Da'Vine Joy Randolph in The Holdovers. Like I alluded to when I was talking about the last category, I feel very, very strongly about my pick in this category. I thought all of the nominees did a good job in their roles, even if a few of these nominations were a bit surprising, but this one's a no-brainer for me. My personal pick absolutely goes to Da'Vine Joy Randolph. The Holdovers was a very ensemble-based film, but she served as the emotional thread that bound this film and its ensemble of characters together. And I think the Academy is gonna agree with me and give her that Oscar. Documentary feature. The nominees are Bobby Wine, The People's President, The Eternal Memory, Four Daughters, To Kill a Tiger, and 20 Days in Mariupol. Definitely a much better set of nominees than we had last year, and right about on par with the documentary shorts counterparts. As often seems to be the case, this year's documentaries were tough, and not exactly the most uplifting stories. So, with a set of films like this, it would be weird to say that you enjoyed any of them, but I did think that both To Kill a Tiger and 20 Days in Mariupol were both very strong documentaries. Again, incredibly tough to watch, but well made and important. But I can only pick one, and that easily goes to 20 Days in Mariupol. I know we've had a lot of war documentaries over the years, but man, this one's haunting and deeply emotional and infuriating. And I would be very, very surprised if it didn't actually win the Oscar. Live action short film. The nominees are The After, Invincible, Night of Fortune, Red, White, and Blue, and The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar. Overall, I was fairly impressed with the nominees in all three of the shorts categories this year, which isn't always the case. Live action definitely had the worst nominee with The After, but I think all four of the other shorts were good to very good. I really liked the quirkiness of The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar and the impact of the heart-wrenching twist in Red, White, and Blue, but my personal pick here goes to Night of Fortune. I can't imagine too many people are going to agree with me on this one, especially with a Wes Anderson film in the mix, but the dark humor, realistic performances, and simple story of this one really worked for me. That said, I don't think it'll work for most Academy voters, so I think The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar will actually win the Oscar, thanks to its stylized nature, star-studded cast, and Netflix ease of access. Cinematography. The nominees are El Conde, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things. Cinematography is always one of my favorite categories, but for the past couple of years, I've been a little disappointed by some of the nominees. And for yet another year, it seems like that trend continues. There were some really great looking films this year, like John Wick Chapter 4, and yet we ended up with some of these underwhelming nominees. At least this year's Best Cinematography did get nominated, so I've definitely gotta go with Oppenheimer for my personal pick. Poor Things might have an outside chance, despite its ridiculous overuse of fisheye lenses, but I think the Academy is gonna agree with me and give it to Oppenheimer. Makeup and hairstyling. The nominees are Golda, Maestro, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, and Society of the Snow. What a strange set of nominees this year. To be perfectly honest, I wasn't particularly enamored with most of these, though I do understand why they would each get a nomination. My personal pick is one that most people, including the Academy, probably won't agree with, but I'm going with Society of the Snow. Sometimes the most subtle and naturalistic effects are the best, and this film conveys months of frostbitten survival using its hair and makeup. I think the voters will actually go with Maestro, however. This film combines a decade-spanning tale with a transformative makeup and prosthetic job to turn Bradley Cooper into Leonard Bernstein. Between the actual makeup work, the Hollywood connection of the story, and the fact that this film is probably going to lose in all of its other categories, I think it has a good shot here. Costume design. The nominees are Barbie, Killers of the Flower Moon, Napoleon, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things. For some reason, I tend to struggle with predictions in this category, so I imagine that'll also be the case this year, but I do think we have a pretty reasonable set of nominees. Mostly period pieces, but we're not overwhelmed with costume dramas, which is always nice. For my personal pick, I've gotta go with Barbie. I do think Poor Things is also pretty good here, but Barbie just stood out more, which is impressive because both of these films are so visually outlandish. Pink, neon, and over-the-top, Barbie's got so many fun human-sized doll costumes, most based on the actual toys, that are surprisingly integral to the story, often quite literally telling us who these characters are. As far as the actual winner, I think this is going to be a bit of a toss-up between Barbie and Poor Things. It could probably just as easily go either way, but I'm leaning towards Barbie for the win. International Feature Film. The nominees are Io Capitano, Perfect Days, Society of the Snow, The Teacher's Lounge, and The Zone of Interest. This has become a surprisingly frustrating category the last couple of years. Not really because of the films, but because of the country's strange decisions when it comes to their submissions. Last year, RRR somehow didn't get selected by India, and this year, France failed to select Anatomy of a Fall. Admittedly, The Taste of Things was also a good movie, but it didn't even make it off the shortlist. Anatomy of a Fall not only would have been selected as a nominee, but it also absolutely would have won the category. But we've got to work with what we've got. And what we've got is still a pretty decent set of nominees. For my personal pick, I've definitely got to go with Society of the Snow. It's not often you see a survival tale like this up for an Oscar, but this gripping and harrowing true story was the strongest for me. It might have a small shot at actually winning, but I suspect the Oscar is going to the Zone of Interest. I mean, it is the only one also nominated for Best Picture after all. Documentary Short Subject. The nominees are The ABCs of Book Banning, The Barber of Little Rock, Island in Between, The Last Repair Shop, and Nai and WIPO. Like I said before, the shorts categories were stronger than usual this year, so even though there were a few lesser nominees here, I thought they were all pretty decent. My personal pick was a little tough to narrow down this year. I was really impacted by the ABCs of book banning, but the short's overly simplistic style and approach hurt it a bit, so The Last Repair Shop gets the edge for me. This not only had a great and uplifting story, but it was also really well constructed. For some reason, I think there's a chance we could see something unexpected happen in this category, and I don't think we can discount any of the 5 nominees. That said, since I have to make a prediction, I'm also going to give The Last Repair Shop the slight edge here, too. Animated Short Film. The nominees are Letter to a Pig, 95 Senses, Our Uniform, Pachyderm, and War is Over, inspired by the music of John and Yoko. Of the 3 shorts categories, I think this has probably the weakest set of nominees, but I think they're all still pretty good. For me, there are 2 that stand out from the others, 95 Senses and War is Over. 95 Senses was one that grew on me as it went, and I think it made a really interesting use of its structure, but I've gotta go with War is Over for my personal pick. I know I'm in the minority here. This one may be a bit cheesy and on the nose with its message, and the needle drop is eye-rolling, but its oversimplified alternative history war story is both uplifting and visually interesting. For my actual prediction, I'm very torn between the same 2 choices. It could easily go either way, but since the Academy voters tend to trend a bit older, I think they'll go for War is Over. Production design. The nominees are Barbie, Killers of the Flower Moon, Napoleon, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things. Much like a handful of other categories, production design tends to be one of those categories that really favors a particular type of film. And in this case, that's period pieces. Perhaps unsurprisingly, 4 of the 5 nominees are period pieces, so that makes things a little tough here. Interestingly enough, I think the strongest contender, and my personal pick, is the only non-period piece here, Barbie. Barbie Land is a pink and neon sight to behold. Authentically artificial, its practical sets and expansive designs faithfully recreate the Barbie playing experience, right down to the 3/4 scale. Much like with costume design, I'm a little torn with my actual prediction, because once again, I think it's going to be a toss-up between Barbie and Poor Things. In fact, I think the split will be even more pronounced in this category. Poor Things' steampunk over-stylization is tempting, but I'm gonna predict Barbie for the win here. Original score. The nominees are American Fiction, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things. This is another category that's been strangely underwhelming the last few years, with a surprising number and caliber of snubs. I still like all 5 of this year's nominees, but it's definitely not the set of scores I would have picked. These range from jazzy to quirky to classically cinematic. I really enjoyed the American Fiction score, but the relentless tension-building quality of Oppenheimer's score puts it at the #1 spot for my personal pick, and also for my official prediction too. Visual effects. The nominees are The Creator, Godzilla -1, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, and Napoleon. Unlike last year, I think the results could go a few different possible directions here. Almost all of these films feel worthy of their nomination, but my personal pick has gotta go to Godzilla -1. I've seen a lot of the Godzilla films, but I think this might actually be my favorite Godzilla design. With his plate-popping charge-up and destructive atomic breath, the visuals here definitely succeed at blowing you away, while not overpowering the human drama of the story. I think the creator has got a pretty decent shot in this category too, with some impressive sci-fi visuals, but I'm giving the edge to Godzilla Minus One for the win as well. Original Screenplay. The nominees are Anatomy of a Fall, The Holdovers, Maestro, May December, and Past Lives. What a weird set of nominees this year. Two of these films have no business being anywhere near a screenplay discussion, let alone being nominated for the Oscar. And then the other three films are amazing and incredibly difficult to choose between, because they're all good in different ways. So even though two are complete throwaways here, I think this is the most challenging category for me this year. Anatomy of a Fall is gripping. The Holdovers is funny yet melancholically cozy, but I've gotta go with Past Lives for my personal pick. It's a film with a deceptively simple story, but it's told in a heart-aching way that way too closely parallels elements of my own life, and it hits me hard every time I watch it. When it comes to the actual prediction, it's just as tough of a choice. I think all three of those films could win, but I think I have to go with Anatomy of a Fall for my official prediction. Honestly though, I would be happy with any of those three winning. Adapted Screenplay. The nominees are American Fiction, Barbie, Oppenheimer, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest. As usual, this is one of the tougher categories to predict, because it's hard to tell how the voters are going to approach it. Are they going to select the best adaptation, or are they just going to select the best screenplay that happens to have been adapted? Most of these nominees are based on books, but things get a little complicated with Oppenheimer's biography basis, and even more complicated when you throw in Barbie's IP-based qualification. So I had a single Barbie when I was a kid, which I guess is enough background for that nominee, but I haven't read any of the 4 books the other nominees are based on, so that makes things especially difficult. That said, my personal pick is going to Oppenheimer, because of how deftly it traverses the decades non-linearly to incorporate both the personal and professional elements of Oppenheimer's life. If you had asked me a few weeks ago, I probably would have predicted some more Oppenheimer domination in this category, but given its sweeping wins at other recent award ceremonies, I'm actually going to predict American Fiction for the win here. Sound. The nominees are The Creator, Maestro, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, Oppenheimer, and The Zone of Interest. I know I complain about it every year, and I realize that we're probably never going to go back, but it still throws me off that sound has been condensed into just a single category. If we still had our 2 different sound categories, I think it would be a little easier to choose between these nominees. Some of them are stronger on the sound design side, while others are stronger on the sound editing side. But luckily for us this year, there's one that's very strong on both sides, Oppenheimer. And for that reason, it's both my personal pick and my official prediction. Original Song. The nominees are The Fire Inside from Flamin' Hot, I'm Just Ken from Barbie, It Never Went Away from American Symphony, Wazazi, A Song for My People from Killers of the Flower Moon, and What Was I Made For from Barbie. Ah yes, the most frustrating of all the Oscar categories for me each year. As usual, that's not really because of the songs themselves, but rather because of the nomination criteria. I understand that it's allowed, but it's just always bothered me that closing credit songs can be nominated. Luckily, this year we do have quite a few movies that incorporate the song into the film itself, so things are a bit better on that front compared to normal. Speaking of normal, everybody's favorite nominee but never winner, Diane Warren, is back for a 15th time. And as much as I want her to finally win an Oscar, she's not gonna. At least not this year. My personal pick has gotta go to the catchy and silly I'm Just Ken. And while I do think it has a small shot at winning, I'm predicting that Billie Eilish will be picking up her second Oscar for What Was I Made For? Film Editing. The nominees are Anatomy of a Fall, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Oppenheimer, and Poor Things. Along with cinematography, film editing tends to be one of my favorite categories each year, and that certainly still holds true this year. I do think there's an odd nominee or two here, but each of these films were well edited. I'm faced with the same 3-film dilemma that I had with original screenplay, but I definitely feel more confident with my pick in this category, Oppenheimer. With its non-linear, decade-spanning story, the editing was key to this film's success, keeping the story incredibly tense while also making it simple enough to follow. And so it's also my official prediction for the category. Directing. The nominees are Justine Triet for Anatomy of a Fall, Martin Scorsese for Killers of the Flower Moon, Christopher Nolan for Oppenheimer, Yorgos Lanthimos for Poor Things, and Jonathan Glazer for The Zone of Interest. There are a couple slightly unexpected nominees this year, and a few unexpected snubs, but I don't think it really matters, because there's only one nominee here that's truly in the running: Christopher Nolan. This isn't the time-bending sci-fi he usually wows audiences with, but this was such a layered and deliberately crafted, cohesive work. So Christopher Nolan is my personal pick, and I also think he's gonna actually win. Actor in a leading role. The nominees are Bradley Cooper in Maestro, Coleman Domingo in Rustin, Paul Giamatti in The Holdovers, Cillian Murphy in Oppenheimer, and Jeffrey Wright in American Fiction. This is one of the easier predictions for me, but one of the harder personal picks to make. As much as I enjoyed almost all of these performances, there were only two that, while watching, immediately stood out to me as potentially Oscar-winning: Cillian Murphy and Paul Giamatti. They're two very different types of performances in two very different types of films, and I like them as close to equally as you can get. So my personal pick may as well be a coin flip, but I'm gonna go with Paul Giamatti, because his blend of humor, sarcasm, and damaged heart was just the right mix for me. That said, I don't think anybody besides Cillian Murphy has much of a shot for the actual win. He had such depth to his performance here, able to convey how haunted Oppenheimer was, both professionally and personally. Actress in a leading role. The nominees are Annette Bening in Naiad, Lily Gladstone in Killers of the Flower Moon, Sandra Uhler in Anatomy of a Fall, Carey Mulligan in Maestro, and Emma Stone in Poor Things. I'm not sure why, but these acting categories almost always seem to surprise me with some of their nominees. Some of the women here were expected, but I was definitely not anticipating Annette Bening making the cut. Anyway, my personal pick was an easy one this year: Sandra Uhler. When I was at TIFF last year, my first two films of the festival were Anatomy of a Fall and The Zone of Interest, so I started things off with an Uhler double feature. But as soon as I saw her performance in Anatomy of a Fall, I knew she was going to be tough to beat, at least for my own personal pick. As the driving performance in this incredibly tense movie, she delivers an impressive trilingual performance that has you rooting for her, but also constantly suspicious of her. There might be a super outside chance of her coming away with the Oscar, but Lily Gladstone has been running away with the category at other award ceremonies, so I'm predicting a win for her here as well. Best Picture. The nominees are American Fiction, Anatomy of a Fall, Barbie, The Holdovers, Killers of the Flower Moon, Maestro, Oppenheimer, Past Lives, Poor Things, and The Zone of Interest. Alright, the category everybody's been waiting for. Although I didn't like the collective set of nominees quite as much as I did last year, we certainly still had some really good films. Just like last year, my top two favorite movies of the year earned Best Picture nominations, which is both exciting and also challenging, because I really liked both of these movies. But as much as I love The Holdovers, I've got to give my personal pick to my favorite film of 2023, Past Lives. I saw that movie at Sundance last January, and knew right away that it was going to be the one to beat, for me. It's such a deeply tender and melancholic exploration of fate and what might have been, and definitely one that I really, really connect with. But as much as I would absolutely love to see it come out on top, and have 2 years in a row of my favorite film winning Best Picture, I don't think that's going to be happening. This is very much the year of Oppenheimer, so along with all of the other Oscars it's definitely going to be picking up, I predict that it'll also be winning Best Picture. Alright, so there you have it. My picks and predictions for the 96th Academy Awards. These were just my thoughts on the likely outcome of this year's Oscars, but I'd love to hear what your predictions are too, so be sure to post them in the comments below. I've already reviewed some of these movies, so I've put links to those videos in the description below, and you could check those out if you want some more in-depth discussion of each, as well as my ratings, pros and cons, and even tailored film recommendations. And if you're interested in buying any of these Oscar-nominated movies, I do have affiliate links to all of them in the description below. I get a small commission from anything you buy using one of my links, so I'd really appreciate it if you use them if you're in the market for any of these movies. Also, be sure to check out my 23 category Oscar ranking series, and come back after the Oscars to see how I did with my predictions in my final Oscar video of the year. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this video, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe if you're at it to see more videos like this, as well as movie reviews. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.